Welcome back, everybody, to Empyrion Galactic Survival on Alpha 12.3.3. This is the Getting Started in Empyrion tutorial series. We are on part 13, and in this episode, we are going to learn everything you ever wanted to know and then some about the Texture and Color tool. There's a little bit more to that tool than you might think, and there's some gotchas and some things you got to be careful with, and some cool tips and tricks, that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to cover in this episode. And we're gonna do that in creative mode rather than in our survival world. So what we'll do in this episode is we'll use a creative world to learn the tool, and then in the next episode we will go back into our survival game, and then we'll actually use it and apply it to our base. Okay, so let's go ahead and start a new game here. It's going to be a single player game, and it's going to be a creative game. Now, when you start a creative game, you basically have arid planet, temperate planet, or a temperate orbit. I'm going to go ahead and use the temperate planet just because I like the lighting here the best. And then you also have another choice where you can choose either if you want to have an empty world. So basically, if you select yes, it removes all structures. But in this case, we want to actually not have an empty world because there's some really cool things I'm going to actually show you in this building that spawns in the creative world. Okay, so let's start the game, and we will learn everything you ever wanted to know about the Texture and Color tool. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy this episode. If you do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't take any effort, and it does help the channel. If you don't like what you see, please consider leaving a constructive and factual comment and help me to improve. All right, we're almost ready to go here. Come on, come on. It is August the 3rd, too, by the way. 2 more days, guys, and then Elion releases the game. And gonna be interesting to see how that all works out. Very much so. Okay, so let's go ahead and go out into the back 40 here. And we just want a nice flat area that we can work in. So we'll just kind of work out here in this little field area. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to hit the tilde key to go into the console, and I'm going to type in GM for God mode just because it'll help us move around a little bit better. We're going to also bring up the creative menu, which is the H key by default, H as in horse. And we're going to need a couple things. We're going to want a base starter block. So we just need one of those. We're going to want a stack of concrete blocks. We're going to want to go here and grab ourselves the Texture and Color tool. And we're going to also want a Multitool and some charges. And I think that's all we'll need to get us started here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, guys, is we're going to set down our base starter block, and we're going to just create a really basic pad structure here to do our little demonstration. Okay. Also, I'm going to go ahead and use the Symmetry plane. We learned how to use this a couple of episodes ago. So we're going to set the YZ plane right in the center of our core, and then we'll just press escape to get out of the N menu. And then let's go ahead and take our block, and we're going to start it here. We're going to use that little control and drag method that we learned, I think in the last episode, where we can lay out a plane of blocks. So let's just kind of go over that again. I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard. I'm going to keep my finger on the control key, click the left mouse button, and then drag a plane of blocks out to, I don't know, right about there maybe. That's good. And then we'll release the mouse key and then the control key. Let's do the same thing over here. We'll just fill this side out, and we got ourselves a nice little pad. We might add a little bit more to this. Well, yeah, we'll just add one more. It doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be a perfect square for our purposes. Okay, let's also, we got something down there. Sometimes you'll see this when you're trying to lay blocks in the game. There will be a spot that it just won't lay the block down, which is kind of a pain in the ass. Sometimes that happens if there's an actual plant like a corn dog or something there. Actually, wasn't there a corn dog there? Oh no, there wouldn't be on the beach. I must be thinking about it was over somewhere else. Anyway, so yeah, sometimes it'll happen, and even though the game thinks there's something there, even though you can't see what's there. So yeah, it's just weird. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually double this up anyway so we can hide the core, because I want to do some work in the middle of this. Okay, so let's just lay out another... Whoa, not quite that much of a plane. Jeez Louise. Let's do that and finish laying out our foundation here. Okay, good. So we got a nice flat foundation. Let's press the N key as in Nancy and turn off the symmetry plane. We are done with that for now. Excellent. So we got ourselves a little pad here to work with. Corn dogs do grow on the beach. Look at that. What do you know? All right, so let's go ahead now and bring out the texture and color tool and learn how this sucker works. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the structure that we're going to work with, and then we're going to right click and it's going to bring up a menu here. And the menu at the top are all the textures we can use, and then the bottom part of the menu is all the colors that we can use. Now, the first thing to know is that the types of textures that are available to you depends upon the type of block that you are trying to texture. So in this case, we're trying to texture concrete blocks, and so we have a set of textures that the game allows us to put on concrete. Most of these are, stone types of textures, tile types of textures, but there are a few that are also metallic or metal types of textures that you might want to use. But if I go over here to this base that's made out of, metal blocks and right click, I got a whole different set of textures here. So these are the metal textures. Okay, so it's important to know that the types of textures that you have access to will depend upon the type of material. If we brought in some extensions, so let's go to base. Extensions have their own little kind of subset of textures. So let's also, while we're at it, let's go ahead and just bring in some metal blocks too. So how about, we'll do some combat steel just to kind of illustrate this. And let's also bring in some wood blocks. Okay, so we got some wood blocks, some combat steel blocks, and then of course the whole pad itself is concrete. Okay, so if I paint my, or rather point my paint gun at the combat steel, then I have all the steel types of textures, right? And I can choose one and apply the textures and so forth. And we'll get into all of that here in just a bit. If I point at the wood block, however, then I got a different set of textures. Now I have textures that are things that I would put on wood, and some of these will cross over to other types of material. But you can see I have various wood textures here, and some of them look pretty cool that you can use, like, to create a wood floor in your base and that sort of thing. The extensions that you would use either on a base or on a vessel, which we'll probably work with these later on in our survival game, but they have their own set of textures, right? And so here again, you have a very limited actually subset of textures that you can put on extensions, but some of these you can only put on extensions, like this one, for example. I can't put that on metal. That's a different texture on metal than it is on an extension. Okay, so the whole point there, guys, is the type of block that you're trying to paint will determine the type of textures that are available to you. For the rest of this tutorial, for the most part anyways, we're just going to work with the concrete pad, but I just wanted to show that to you. Okay, so let's get rid of these guys. Excellent. All right, so painting 101. Let's go ahead and look at our concrete pad, and we're going to right click and bring up our texture menu. So this is pretty simple. Let's say that I want to use this blue and white checker texture. I just select it and I can paint. I can hold down the button if I want to, or paint it one at a time, whatever. Okay. Notice too that I can adjust the rotation of the block each time I hit the block. So that might be something you'll want to do, because I might want this whole thing to look, to all be going the same direction. So I might have to tweak a couple of things on the blocks to get them to look the way that I want them to look. Sometimes too, what'll happen is, depending upon how the blocks were laid down, you might have one block in the middle that was pivoted the wrong way when it was laid down. So in that case, let's just demonstrate this really quick. I'm going to turn this block this way. Okay, and so, you know, that block was laid down that way. So when I laid down all my textures, I have this one spot that doesn't look quite right. So one way that you can maybe fix that, depending upon what you're trying to do, is you might be able to fix it by using the multi-tool. So in this case, we right-click and go to Change and Rotate. Let's get over here so you can see the text a little bit better. And then you just, you know, set your axis the way you want it, and then you can rotate the block as appropriate. Okay. So why isn't that rotating for me now? I don't know. There's a reason why I don't know what the hell's going on. I can't rotate it anymore. What if can we rotate it this way? Yeah, now it's rotating. Did I rotate the wrong block? Maybe that's what I did. Now it's rotating. Yeah, it wasn't working earlier. I don't know why. Anyway, okay. Well, one way you can maybe fix this is to use the rotate option on the multi-tool, but there's one situation at least where that doesn't work, and I'll show that to you in just a little bit. Right now, just focus on the fact that you can paint a texture by, you know, doing one block at a time or holding it down and then doing several. And if you do see something off with the textures, if there's one block that's not going in quite the same direction, it's because it's rotated the wrong way. Okay, so if I want to remove these textures, I just click this little button up in the upper left-hand corner, and then I can erase them. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Same thing for color. Color works exactly the same way. I select a color, I paint the blocks. I can change the color to something else if I want to, or I can erase the color. Pretty simple. We have 3 different sizes of brushes. You have the small brush, which is 1 block. Okay. You have the medium-sized brush, which is a 5x5 area. And then you have the large brush, which is a 10x10 area. Okay. The game tells you that it's an 11x11, but it's actually 10x10. See, watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's a 10x10 area, but the game tells you that it's 11x11. I don't know why they tell you that. It's a mistake, though, obviously, because you can see it's just a 10x10. And then, you know, doing something like this is going to be useful if you have a large area that you want to paint and or texture. If you're going to do this, though, be careful, because if you are here, let me change something here really quick. I'm going to do this. Okay. I'll show you what I did there later. We definitely want to talk about that too, because it's can be dangerous. But anyway, let's go ahead and just make a little column here. Now, if I am painting a large area or even a medium area, and I'm within range of another part of the structure, it's going to bleed over onto the structure. Let's stop here, go into our debug menu, and bring the sun back up in the sky so we can see better. Okay. And so this is often unavoidable. So if it happens, you know, just paint the large area, and then you can come back later, set your small brush, and then, you know, just touch up or remove the spillover as appropriate. Okay? So those are your brush sizes. Now, I told you earlier when we talked about the rotation that there's a situation where using the rotation option on the multi-tool doesn't work, and here's an example of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this texture here, and I'm going to paint this block on all sides. Actually, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you I'm going to show you something else and also demonstrate this at the same time. So let's erase this. Okay, so this setting here is paint the entire block, so all sides of the block. All right, that's not on by default, and so if it's not on by default, I'm just going to paint one side of the block. Okay, but if it is on, then what it's going to do is it's going to paint the entire block on all 6 sides. Okay, so that is this apply to whole block. So this is useful because there are sometimes where you want to paint the entire block, and then there might be other situations where you only want to paint one side of the block. So an example of that might be, let's say that I'm painting a fuselage on a new vessel that I'm building, and I want to use a different texture on the exterior hull than I do on the interior. In that case, I want to make sure when I'm painting the exterior, I'm only painting on that side and not the entire block, or it's going to also use the same texture on the inside, and then I have to go back and, you know, fix it later. Sometimes it makes sense to do that, though, where you paint the entire block one particular texture, and then you go back and just change one side of it. So that, you know, that's definitely a viable way to do it sometimes, too. Just kind of depends upon what you're trying to do. Okay, so let me show you the rotation situation where you can't use the multi-tool to fix it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this texture because it has these nice horizontal lines that we can see. And I'm going to, let's use a blue too so it stands out. And we're going to have this on whole block. Okay, so you could be in a situation where the sides are not going the same direction on every side. So let's just show that there, okay? In this particular case it was, but you can run into this more with, you know, different odd geometry types of shapes. Or maybe you accidentally, you know, like I just did here, hit that and didn't mean to. And now, you know, not everything is going the same direction. So you got some vertical and some horizontal. Well, to fix that, I just showed you how to do it. Make sure you are not on apply to whole block. And then you can just cycle back and forth between the rotations of the lines to fix it. So in the case of a block where, you know, some sides are going a different direction, I can't fix that by rotating it, you know, with this tool. That's not going to work, right? So I have to apply the fix to each individual side, and I have to make sure that I'm not applying it to all sides, and then I can change the direction as needed until everything's going the way that I need it to go. Okay, so that's the other situation where rotation could be a thing for you to have to fix. Okay, so that covers that. Now let's talk about next working with textures and colors simultaneously. So what we're going to do is we're going to just pull all this up, get rid of that, and we're going to let's get rid of this. Now here's another thing you can do with the paintbrush too. You can also use it to erase. So if I set that onto large and then set this onto erase, then it'll erase that large 10 by 10 area, which is pretty useful too. Okay, so next thing. We want to, you can use the color and the texture at the same time. And that's handy because here again, like I said, in earlier versions of the game, you had a separate texture tool and a separate color tool. So you had to go through and texture the whole vessel or base, and then you had to come back through again and color it or vice versa. Now you can do both at the same time, so it saves us a lot of time. But there's a couple of quirky things about it to know. So let's go into here and let's select, I don't know, let's say, yeah, let's go back to our brick texture and maybe we'll make it a blue. Okay, so, whoops, I had that on the large brush. That's okay, that'll actually work. And so what it does is it paints both the texture and also the color at the same time, which is pretty cool. Okay, I actually think I am going to erase that though. So let's go back here and just erase it. It makes that really loud popping sound, which is super irritating. It's been doing that for a long time. Let's just go back to small blocks, and then I'm going to redo that again. So I'm going to select the brick texture and then the blue color. Now here's another thing. If I left click on any of these squares, it selects the square and closes the menu, and I'm ready to start painting. Okay? However, when you're selecting a texture and a color, you don't want the menu to close because then you have to open it back up again. So what you can do is you can right click and select a texture and the menu stays open. Really useful. So in this case, I right click to select the texture I want, and then I can also select the color, and then it closes the menu and I'm ready to paint. Okay, so left click selects the color or texture and closes the menu. Right click selects the color or texture but leaves the menu open so you can select something else. Pretty useful. Okay, so here's where things get a little bit strange. So if I apply a texture and a color at the same time, the game allows me to remove the texture from the color, but it doesn't allow me to remove the color from the texture. Don't ask me why, that's just the way it works. It's really kind of bizarre, but that's the way it works. So if I go in and I want to remove the texture, but I want to keep the color, what I would think I could do is just hit this little remove button and then remove it. But look, it doesn't work. And likewise, if I have that texture selected and I want to just remove the color, so I think, okay, well, I just select this, also doesn't work. Okay, it's rotating the blocks though. So what I can do is I can change the texture and the color. I can just overwrite it, and that's fine. But if I want to remove it, the only way to do that, if you want to remove both of them at the same time, is you have to select both of these to remove them. But then it actually sets it back to its actual default, texture, and it basically erases everything. If I wanted to keep the color but remove the texture, and honestly, I'm not I don't have a really good example of why I would do that, but I'm sure there is a reason for it. The way that I would do that is as follows. So let's go ahead and change to a green this time. So let's say we've got our green bricks here, and I want to remove the texture, but I want to keep the color. Actually, you know what? I guess you might do that if you've created a custom color and you want to keep that color, and I'm going to talk about how to do that later. And you want to revert that particular block or set of blocks back to its default setting. In that case, maybe that's a time you might do that. I don't know. So the way that I do that, though, is I go into here, I right-click, and I have to select this removal option. Or no, sorry. First, I have to select the remove button, and then I have to select the removal option. Notice that this turns red. Okay, now I can remove the texture, but the color remains in place. But like I said, unfortunately, there isn't a removal option for colors. So you can't remove the color and keep the texture. You can only remove the texture and keep the color. It's just the way the game works. I don't usually use that at all. If I need to remove something, I just remove the whole damn thing and then, choose my new texture and new color as needed. Okay? But that's the way that works. It's a little odd, but it's just the way that it works. I don't know of any other way to do that. All right, let's see. What's the next thing we want to take a look at? Let's go ahead and texture. Let's choose, say, this texture. Should have right-clicked, and let's go with, I don't know, this red. And maybe what we'll do is we'll do a medium area, and let's just kind of paint like a little swath across the thing here. And then I kind of got off on my line there, so let's just fix the spillover. Okay, so there we go. So now we've got our little texture and color strip here. You know what, though? I don't like that for what I'm going to demonstrate next. Let's change that to... What's this? Is this kind of like a marble? Oh, no, that doesn't look good either. There's a marble look. I thought that was it there. Maybe let's try this one. Yeah, let's try that one. Okay, so we're just going to use this texture here and paint over. You can always paint and texture over something. It's just that when you want to remove it, you can't remove the color from the texture. Okay, so we've got our little strip here. Let's fix that by erasing that. Okay. Now, the third thing that you can put on a block is a symbol. And symbols can go over colors and textures. So the way you get to that is you right-click the menu and you click Symbols. Now, symbols work like textures in that you can remove symbols separate from colors and or textures, but you can't remove colors from symbols. So you have several options here. You've got letters, you've got numbers and special characters, you've got decals that you can use, and then you also have these, kind of like, I kind of refer to these as second textures, even though they're considered symbols in terms of the way that the game treats them. All right, so if I select this symbol here, what I can do then is I can paint that on top of the textures, and it rotates too, just like the other things. I like to use this particular symbol to paint like a parking area in my hangar, in my capital ship, as an example. So you could outline it like so, and then apply corners to it. And there you go. Now you got yourself a little parking spot for your hover vessel or something like that. Okay, so that's symbols. And then, of course, you can also, if you want to, you can select, you know, some decals. And those will also flip each time I do it. And, of course, you can apply letters. So a lot of times what I will do is when I build a new ship or something, I'll put old guy on it or something, you know, my name on it, that sort of thing. And that's how you do it. And again, you can just cycle through the letters by continuing to spray until you get it the direction that you want it to go. There is another way in the game that you can also create even fancier types of text, and that's through the use of LCD projectors. However, we're not going to cover those in this tutorial because they're a little more advanced and because I have not actually worked with them yet myself, so I don't feel like I'm knowledgeable enough on them to do a tutorial. But that, you know, and that's a relatively new thing. You see all these little holographic signs in here, which we are going to actually look at later. Those are created by LCD projectors, so you can do some really cool stuff. But again, that's a little more advanced than we're going to cover in this tutorial. Okay, so yeah, that's symbols. And then the same thing, if you want to remove the symbol, you can remove the symbol, but you can't remove the texture, the color. It's the same thing. So you need to make sure that you have symbols on. You need to click removal. No, click this first and then click removal. And then you can remove the symbols without removing the textures and the colors underneath. All right, very good. Now, we're going to erase all of this. And so the way that we're going to do that is we're going to select make sure both the texture and the color selector is off. And we're going to do a large area so we can just wipe this out, really quickly. Why is this? Because I'm on symbols, not texture. Okay, that happened, guys, because I was still on symbols, so it wasn't removing the texture. Now it is. But see, the symbol also needs to be removed, so now we have to go back to symbols and get those out of the way too. Okay, so you have to kind of treat the symbols and the textures as separate layers because that's in fact what they are. All right, so let's see, what's the next thing we're going to take a look at? We want to... Okay, I'm going to show you something that you can do, which is very useful, but can potentially also be very dangerous. So you have to be really careful. And that is this little feller down here, the replace mode. So let's go back to textures. And where you would use something like this is if you want to apply... Well, there's two ways that you could use this, okay? One way that you could use it is if you want to apply a base texture and or color to a structure. So in other words, if there's a particular texture that you want that base, you know, to be made out of as the main texture, as the main base of it, then you can use this tool for that. The other thing that it's useful for, and probably I would even say its main purpose, is if I want to change this specific texture on this building to something else, I can change it wherever it occurs on this building with one little squirt of the gun. Okay, so let's look at the first method. The first method is pretty cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the texture that I want to use. So let's say that it's this brick texture. I want this to be my base texture for my base. Okay, so I'm going to select it. And let's say I'm also, you know, really digging the color blue, which I do because it is my favorite color. And we're going to go ahead and make this blue at the same time. Okay, now if I select this replace mode, what it's going to do is it's going to replace whatever texture I happen to be pointing at with the new texture. Watch this. Boom. Very cool. Because now it sets the entire structure, or rather more specifically, every texture on that entire structure that I was pointing at to this texture. So it sets my base, and now I can go and change the colors and the trim to other things as I want. But I've got the whole base selected. This is way faster than, you know, doing this manually one block at a time, or even faster than using the large paintbrush. So really cool. But hopefully you can see where this can actually be dangerous too. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to try and recreate this texture over here. just so that I can set it back later. So let's just put this block down here for the moment. We might actually need to use a metal block. Not sure, but we'll just use a metal block. Okay, so that's using... okay, that's using this texture here. So let's see if we can find it. This one. Okay, so that's the texture that that's using. And the color that this is using is actually probably a custom color. It looks like a custom gray, but let's just... It doesn't have to be, you know, get back exactly like it was before. We'll just get it close. Boy, if we can. Yeah, you know what? Maybe that is... I don't know. This looks a little blacker, but you know, black will be fine. Black will be fine. Okay, so let me demonstrate how you could really screw up your base if you're not careful with this tool. So let's say that I want to change this specific texture on the base. It's going to change it wherever it occurs on the base. All right, so maybe I'm on my server and I want to punk one of my friends and I want to really jack up their base or something like that. I don't know. Don't do that to your friends, guys. That would suck. But let's just choose something really god-awful. So let's go with, like this texture here. And let's just choose, I don't know, this purple color here, okay? We have replace mode on. Now watch what happens. Everywhere on this base that texture occurred has been updated to this new texture. Okay, so hopefully you can see where you want to be careful with that particular tool, because you could definitely screw something up. All right, now we're going to fix it though, because what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to select the correct texture, which is where the hell is that texture at? Here. And we're going to set it back to black, and now we're going to put it back the way that it was. Okay? Very handy, but also very powerful and potentially dangerous tool. So just be really careful when you're using that this little replace option. Now, the game helps you too by showing you in the lower right-hand corner. Doggone it, it's getting dark again. You know what we're going to do? We're going to set it back to daytime, sometime around noonish or so, and we're going to slow down the time so it stays daytime like for the whole damn time. Okay, in fact, yeah, we set that all the way to 0. This is, by the way, this is the debug menu. It's available to you in creative mode. Basically, it stays this time forever now. Okay, so we have good light. All right, so I showed you that the flip tool. Now, what I was going to tell you is, if you look in the lower right hand corner of my screen, it kind of shows you the mode that the tool is currently in. So it's a good idea to pay attention to that, so that way you kind of know what mode you're in. And I think, let's try something here. If we set symbols on, no, I guess it doesn't tell me I'm in symbol mode. I thought maybe that it did. But it does tell me I'm in full block mode, so you can see that the little red block appeared. And if I have this on, it'll tell me that I'm also in replace mode. So, pay attention to that, because you don't want to screw up your really nice build. All right, I think, guys, that takes care of the textures, the symbols, and the colors, how to erase them, how to set the medium and large brushes, how to replace, how to do a whole block, and we also learned how to rotate the colors and textures as needed. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how to use custom color palettes. So, what we'll do is, here, let's get rid of these blocks. And what I want to do is, I think I'm going to remove this texture that we used. So let's go back to textures, and we're going to just go back to the default block style. And yeah, and we're not going to color it yet. We will in a second. Okay, and then we're going to choose replace mode, and we're going to, what the hell? There we go. I still had it on black. So now we're back to the default blocks, okay? Let's turn replace mode off. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's go ahead and color this a few different colors just so we can see this in action. So what I'm going to do is let's color the whole thing maybe this blue here. Okay, so let's do a replace, and we'll color the whole thing blue. Okay, so that's the first color we're using. Now, let's take and use, let's say this little color here. We're going to select that with the right mouse button so it doesn't close the menu, and we're going to also turn that off, and we're going to select the large brush. And then I'm going to more or less just try and kind of paint that in the center. We're going to make like a little almost kind of like a target type of configuration here. Okay, let's turn this back to small, and let's set this back to this color, and we'll just, you know, kind of fix the overflow here. There we go. Okay. So it looks like we might need to go one more block this way. But, you know, for what I'm going to demonstrate, that doesn't really matter, actually. So let's not worry about it. Okay, now we're going to go to the medium brush, and we're going to select this blue, okay? And then we're going to pop that kind of just right in the middle, okay? So we kind of have like a little bit of a target effect here. Okay, so we have 3 different colors. Actually, you know what? Let's actually make this... Let's make it green, just so we have some really good contrast here. Okay. So we have used, up till now, we've used the default color palette to create, or apply rather, all of these colors. So if I right-click on the base, I have to be fairly close to it and be looking at it. If I right-click, you notice there's this configure button down here. Now, when I bring that up, it brings up this little color palette, and I can do a few things with this. I can change one of the colors on this palette to something else. The thing that's really important for you to understand, though, is that when I'm on the current tab, it means that I'm going to change the color palette for the base or the structure that I'm currently looking at. That's really important, because all of these blocks that we colored here, the game looks at it this way. It says these blocks were colored with whatever is in this square, and these blocks were colored with whatever is in this square, and these blocks were colored with whatever is in this square. You see what I'm saying? So if I change the color of this square, and it's already applied to this structure, it's going to automatically change on the structure itself. So you have to know that, I guess is what I'm trying to say, so that you understand how it works and you don't screw something up that you didn't mean to do. So the best way really to do this, guys, is to create a temporary palette and not modify the current palette, but rather create a temporary palette. However, if you do modify the current palette, that's okay, because you can actually reset it back to its original configuration. But it's better to create a palette. So you can create up to 5 additional color palettes by just clicking on those little plus buttons until you see them all here. Now, when I do that, it basically just creates a copy of each one of the default palettes. So these are all currently the same thing. But notice that when I select palette 1, a button up here pops up and it says apply to current. What that means is it says take whatever's in this palette and apply it to the current structure that you're looking at. Okay, so how this is going to work now is, let's say I want to mess around with these colors and I want to change a few things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the squares that we've already used, just so that you can see how this works. So we're going to select the first one that we used, which is this guy here, and we're going to just change something about this. We're going to change it. So we do that over here with these sliders, okay? So let's talk about what this is. This is hue. And what hue does is it basically cycles through all the colors, through the full spectrum, right? So if you look at the block that I've selected in the palette, you can see that it's changing color as I'm moving this slider. Okay, so I can change that color to something else by using the hue if I want to. Okay, this, let's make this kind of more of a purplish. This next slider is called the saturation, and think of that as the opacity of the color. If I have that cranked all the way to the right, that's full opacity. That's the full color in all of its glory. If I start to move it to the left, then it starts to fade a little bit, and it becomes less opaque. And if I move it all the way to the far left, then it turns gray, which means no color at all at that point. Okay, so your saturation is your color opacity. You could also think of it as the intensity of the color too, if you wanted to. This next slider is called the value. Think of this more as your brightness. So that brightens the color. If I turn it all the way to the right, it's the full brightness of the color. If I turn it all the way down, it actually turns black at that point because there's no light in the color at that point. And you can see that as I move these sliders, it also adjusts the RGB values as well. So that's the next thing to keep in mind. These hue, saturation, and value sliders are not mutually exclusive from the RGBs. They're all connected. So, I told you I could adjust the color with the hue, but I can also adjust the color with the RGBs. So this is maybe more useful to you if you know for a fact that you want to add, say, more red to it. So in that case, I could add a little more red to the purple color, or maybe a little bit less red, or maybe a little more green, right? Or maybe more blue to make it more of a periwinkle. So, but notice that when I move this, these are also moving. So like I said, they're not mutually exclusive with one another. If you happen to know the RGB code for the color, you can type those in directly. So, maybe my code is 567632. I just pulled the number out of a hat. But let's say that I was on the internet and I saw a color that looked really cool and I want to use that color on my capital vessel. So I figure out what the RGB code of that is. And there's ways that you can do that. I'm not going to get into that right now, but if you can figure out the code, I guess is what I'm trying to say, you can type it in directly. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're creating our own custom color palette. Okay, so let's just get that kind of back to the purplish, purple that we had, which was somewhere right around in here, I think. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we've changed that color. Now we also, let's see, what else did we use? We used this green here, I think, didn't we? Okay, so let's just change this for shits and grins too. So we're going to change that to maybe kind of like this orangish. Maybe we'll add a little more red to it and make it, just this orange. But, if you don't know the color codes, and if you're not like a professional graphics designer, the best advice I can give you is just use your eyeballs. Just tweak with it until you find a color that you like and it looks good. Okay, now, just for purposes of demonstration, I'm going to just randomly kind of change everything else to whatever. Just so we can actually see that it's different. Now, we did use this texture too. Did we? No, we did. Well, we did originally. I think it was either this one or this one, but we're going to change them all anyway. So let's make that, I don't know, some kind of weird-ass green there. We'll make this that color, but kind of fade it out, so it's more of a pastel type of look. We'll change this brown. We'll change this here. And just, again, randomly changing these so we can actually see, that changes have been made. Okay, so anyway, I've gone through and I've changed the palette to what I want. Okay, so now, if I want to, there's a couple of things I can do with this, right? I can click Apply to Current, and if I do so, what it's going to do is it's going to apply this color palette to my current structure. Watch what happens. See how it changed it? Because remember, the game used whatever color is in this square for these blocks. So it doesn't think of this color in terms of the original blue. It thinks of it in terms of whatever was in this block. So I've completely changed the color of this structure by changing the palette and then applying that to the current. Now this is the current palette. See how these are exactly the same? Okay, so that's one way you can do that. Now you can also directly change the current palette as well by simply selecting it and then making the changes to it. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I kind of think it's better, you know, to create your own custom palettes, change it there instead of the current, and then apply it. But you can. And the way you do that is you just make sure you're on current, and then you select, you know, whatever value it is that you want to change, and then you can just adjust it. And as you do so, see how it's changing the current structure as I change the color. So you can, and this can be handy because, you know, let's say that I want, you know, it's one thing for me to look at the color here in the swatch, but what does it actually look like on the material? So what I can do is I can click this hide button, and then I can tweak with the color and actually see what it's actually looking like on the structure, which is pretty cool. All right, two more things I want to show you about this. So let's say that I've gone to great lengths to spend a lot of time to create this really cool custom palette that I want to use, and maybe I might want variations of this, or maybe, you know, you have a total of 31 colors on each palette, okay, and you have 5, so you basically have 155 different colors that you could, you could potentially modify or customize if you wanted to. I mean, I never would use that many colors, but some people might, I don't know. Okay, so let's say that I like this palette, but I want more than 31 colors. I want to use most of these colors, but then there's a few that I want to change, okay? So you can copy either one square, multiple squares by holding down Shift and clicking, or the entire palette by clicking here, holding down Shift and clicking here. Then you can copy that to another palette by selecting the palette and then pasting, and see it brings the colors over. So again, you can copy the whole thing, you can copy one square or multiple squares. So right now these palettes are the same, but now what I might want to do is I might want to tweak the top row to a whole new set of colors, but still have my other overall custom colors. Or I might want to change them entirely so I have two completely different palettes, all with my own custom colors. Okay, so I've just changed those a little bit to see, you know, so you can see it. And then I can apply that to current if I want to, and of course it'll update if any of the squares that I changed are in fact being in use on the structure right now. Okay, so let's say I changed the current to something different, right? And I want to get it back the way it was. Okay, the way you do that is you select the current, you go to preset, and you have actually two presets. Default one is the normal, and see how it changed it back to what it was originally when we used the default color palette. And then you also have this default 2, which is more of a pastel types of colors. So those two just come built into the game. They're always going to be there for you whenever you want to use them. And that, my friends, is how you set it back to the default if you happen to change the current and you want it back the way that it was originally. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to save this. This is really important. These tabs that we created are not permanent. They will go away when I log out of the game, and they'll be gone forever. So you can only use them in the session that you're currently in. So you might be thinking, well, that sucks, because what if I, you know, spent half a day creating all these cool colors and I want to use them over and over and over again? Well, you can do that. There's two ways that you can do it. You can apply the palette to a structure and then save the structure itself in the blueprints, and then it saves the palette along with it. Okay, so if I'm going to do that, then let's go back to this custom palette that we created here. We'll apply it to current and see how it changed. All right, now if I go ahead and click OK and get out of the color menu, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. Okay, so we're going to do right Alt O, and that brings up the blueprint menu and lets me save this. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this as a base, and we're going to save it as we're just going to call this the color demo base. Okay, so in saving that base, I have also now saved the color palette that goes along with it. So if I go over here now and I spawn that base in somewhere else, so let's just kind of go over here and we're going to press the F2 menu to bring up the blueprints. We're going to select our color demo base, and we're going to click spawn, and we spawn it in. Okay. Now, if I go into my color menu to configure, and I select current, it saved my custom palette. Okay, so I have all those colors saved with the base. So that is one way that you can save your custom palettes. The other way is to use a nifty little text file trick. Okay, so this is actually very easy to do. What you want to do is you want to, set up your palette the way that you want it, and then you click the copy button. Okay, and then what you do is you bring up a text file. So I'm just going to, I have a text file, a blank text file over here that I'm going to drag onto the screen. I'm going to click into the text file, and I'm going to Control V to paste the colors. Hold on a second. You need to select all of them. Sorry. You need to select all of them. So click here, click in the lower right-hand corner, then copy them, and then bring, let me drag this over here. Okay, and then if I paste, then it pastes all the codes in for those colors into this text file, right? Then I save the file, and I name it, whatever it is I want to name it. I'll just save it directly to the desktop as color palette 1, or whatever I want to name it. Okay, and then I just save that as on the desktop, and then I have it, and then I just save the file itself, of course, and then I have a backup of my palette. All right, so then I go along my merry way, and I come back, I don't know, 2 months later and decide I want to build something else in Empyrion, and I want to use those cool custom colors that I created when I built my big-ass capital ship way back in the day. All right, so this is how this works. What you essentially do is you do the reversal of it, right? So let's set this back to the default. So we'll go back to, we can even set it to default too. Okay. Oh, incidentally, you can change all these without affecting the base. Let's put the base back the way that it was, as long as you're not looking at it. So if I just go over here and look, then I can still access the color palette menu and work with them, but I'm not affecting the actual base. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to apply, we were going to do this on default too. Okay. I want to apply my custom color palettes to tab 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever I want to use. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my text file. I'm going to copy all of the codes, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to click paste, and there they are. And I just pasted them into my game, and then I can use them again. So if you dig this, if you want to take the time to create your own custom colors and save those, the two ways to do that are to either A, save it to the blueprint shop along with your structure that you applied it to, which is what we did here, or B, copy the colors, paste them into a text file, and then save the text file, and then sometime in the future you can paste those back into the game in one of those tabs. All right, guys, this is the last thing we're going to look at in this this episode, and then we got to wrap it up. We've gone kind of long, but I think we've learned some good stuff here. Let's go into this base. What I'm going to show you is really, really cool for new players. It's even good for experienced players that need a refresher on how things work. Let's get out of God mode so we can just walk around here. Inside these bases that spawn in the creative worlds, you've got a library of very useful information about just about everything you need to know about the game. Much of the stuff that you see in here is the stuff that we're learning in this tutorial. And so what's cool about that, of course, is that you can come in here at any point in time and read through this stuff and to get a reminder of how certain things work. So, for example, this is all information about getting started and hover vessels and what you need to build them, that sort of thing. Information about small vessels, capital vessels, bases. Same kind of idea. It tells you what you're going to need, and the bare minimum, of course, of what you're going to need. Information about generators and fuel tanks. Over here, we've got information about storage, thrusters. We talked a little bit about this, I think, in one of the earlier episodes. And this is super useful because what this is telling you, and pay attention to this, you guys, when you're reading this on your own, this is basically the formula that you need to follow to make sure that you have enough thrust for whatever gravity you happen to be in. Really important, because I mentioned that some of the lava planets in particular can have really heavy gravity. So if you see a lava planet that you want to go to, and let's say that it's 4 Gs, and you want to know, is my ship able to still lift off under that gravity, follow this formula here. Basically, CVs require 10 meganewtons per kiloton at 1 G. Okay, and SVs require 10 kilonewtons per 1 metric ton at 1 G. So basically what that means is if I'm going to go to a 4G planet, I better have 40 kilonewtons per metric ton on my ship. So you'll have to do the math on that, but that's the formula for you to follow. Really cool stuff. Information about storage, cockpits, RCSs, core of the base in the ship, and that sort of thing. And then down below, we've got, the same kind of thing going on. So we've got information about size classes. So we talked a little bit about that, and, triangle count and complexity of ships and how that can affect the performance and how long it takes to load it in and that sort of thing. Building a farm, which we're going to do in an upcoming episode. Building with gravity, CPU balancing, which we've talked about. All kinds of cool stuff, flight controls, and so on and so forth. Here's what I want to show you specifically, though, because this ties in with today's tutorial. Information about, guess what? The texture and color tool. So this little area of the LCD talks about the more basic stuff, the first things that we talked about, and how you can apply textures and colors and erase them and that sort of thing in full block mode, small, medium, and large paintbrush mode, replace mode, etc., etc. And then around the corner here, this advanced color customization, that goes to and tells you how to do all of those custom color palettes that we just learned about. And then down below, it talks about the hue, saturation values, the red, green, and blue levels that we looked at. Over here, it talks about advanced textures and tells you which types of blocks we'll use or are grouped together for a texture set. Super useful information because, you're not going to remember everything that we covered in this tutorial. And you might want to come back and rewatch it, and I hope you do. That would be awesome. But you're not going to want to watch this video 10 times over. But what you can do is you can come back here and just kind of refresh your memory by reading this very useful information. Super cool. So make sure you guys create a creative world. Come in here and just kind of check out this really cool stuff on these LCD panels. Whew. Okay, guys, that was a lot of stuff, but I hope you found this tutorial really useful. And learned about the color and texture tool and what you can do with it, and some things you have to be careful of with it, of course. But it's really fun, and it's because of that tool there that we have such cool looking buildings and structures and vessels in this game. You can do a lot with it and make stuff look really cool. So I hope you guys get into that in your games and you learn how to use it and enjoy using it. Guys, I got to go to bed. It's late. And I'm tired, and so I will see you in the next episode, whenever that will be, and we'll continue on. Oh, there is one thing I do want to point out to you. The table of contents for all of these videos is in the description of the videos, and I've created an index with time codes all the way up through episode or part 4. It is my intention to continue working on the later episodes, so eventually all of the videos will be indexed with the time codes that you can click on in the description. It'll take you right to that point in the video. So, if you just want to refer back to a specific thing, like what was that thing that old guy said about using the replace part of the tool? Well, you can do that, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of time for me to do that. So I'm just kind of working on it a little bit at a time, but my goal and my intent is to finish the series, and then after I finish the series, eventually get all the videos also indexed to make them more useful to you guys. Okay. Yeah, the game's going to be released in 2 days from now, guys. I did mention this too. I don't expect these real fundamental things we're learning to change much with the release of the game. So, most of what we're learning here should apply to the main game too, or the released game. If it turns out that that's not the case, then I will consider, updating the tutorials to the pertinent things that are in the release game. But I think, I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling like it's going to, all this fundamental stuff is not going to change significantly. And in which case these tutorials are still going to be useful even with the main release. I'm going to shut up and quit talking and go to bed. See you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.